You're listening to What It's Like with Luce, a podcast highlighting ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host Lucy Norris, and on today's episode, I'm chatting with founder of Peppercorn, an initiative connecting businesses with excess food in order to feed those who need it most in our communities. Living in Surrey, it was his summers spent in his parents' home of Iran that sparked an entrepreneurial flair in this week's guest. Busy testing the waters from a young age, it was time spent at university that allowed him to really get the ball rolling with the launch of his social enterprise. Noticing the amount of food waste that came from cafes and restaurants, he wanted to change the way things worked. Racking his brains for ways to redistribute the food that would otherwise end up in the bin, he came up with a system that would eventually earn him a spot at the Undergraduate of the Year awards. To share how he did it, here's what it's like to be Sina Sadrzadeh. Welcome, Sina. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. I think a really good starting point for this whole conversation is to go all the way back to when you were growing up. I think you said you grew up in London, but correct me if I'm wrong. And just to chat a little bit about what that experience was like for you, whether entrepreneurialism was something that featured heavily in your childhood or something that you stumbled upon later on in life.
Thank you so much, Lucy, for inviting me on the podcast. I've been following you for quite a long time, and yeah, it's really good to finally be on. And yeah, for childhood, so I grew up in Surrey, which is pretty close to London. It's like 20 minutes away from London. So whenever people don't know where Surrey is, I'm always like, yeah, I live in London, and I went to school in London. So
Okay.
yeah, I guess I can pass for a Londoner, but technically no. And yeah, childhood for me was really good actually, because my parents are both Iranian immigrants, so I'm like first generation. I can speak both languages, but I think the reason why, so I've always kind of been entrepreneurial, and I think the reason why I've been like that is because I really take the most of all opportunities. I feel like that comes from, I've grown up in the UK, of course, but I went back, I visit Iran. Well, I did visit Iran every year before, and observing, my cousins in that spot and observing them, they're pretty much the same age as me, but they don't have as many opportunities as I do. Their schools aren't as good. They don't have as much support. They don't have, just in total, they just don't have as many things to do. Their universities aren't great. But me, I'm the same age as them, but I've got so many more things going for me, and there's so many things in the background that a lot of other people don't really realize. But you can take advantage of those so much more than someone living in Iran. And so I saw this, and I just didn't want to let it go to waste. So when I was younger, I pretty much tried everything, and I didn't know what being an entrepreneur was like. I didn't know what it really took to be that, but it really came from making the most of all opportunities that I could. So in secondary school, I used to sell like sweets. I think that's quite a common one. And then they were like, "Yeah, you can't do this anymore. This is wrong." So I was like, "Okay, this is back when I was like maybe like I don't know, 11 or 12." There's a lot of money to be made actually selling sweets in schools, but they don't like it very much. So yeah, I had to stop that, and I had to think more creatively.
And so from my research, I stumbled upon the fact that you were a freelance football journalist for a while as well. I don't know when you did this, but I guess what I'm picking up from you is that you had, a variety of interests in so many different things. So why, when you were thinking of going to university, did you settle on economics and management?
So yeah, the football journalism thing, I actually still do it. I actually still do it. Is before I started the podcast, I was very much like dedicated on that, because as I said, I've like Iranian heritage and stuff, and so I follow Iranian football, and there aren't that many Western Iranian football journalists. So I kind of saw, and I was really interested in myself. So, but after my first year university exams, I was a bit bored. I was like, what? Let me just start a Twitter page and see what all the boys are saying. Let's see what all the like Iranian football fans are saying out here. So I basically started it, and yeah, it actually grew far bigger than I thought it would grow. I've got like over 1,000 followers on Twitter now. It's still going. Like it's a very part time. I maybe spend like I don't know, less than an hour a week on it. It's very small. But during the World Cup, so 2 years ago, 2018, that's when it blew up for me. That was huge. It was actually crazy how big that blew up. And so I was invited to write columns for the Times in Malta. I don't know how they found me, and I really don't know how they found me, but I wrote a column for them, and I was in the same, bracket of journalists as some like really, really like big journalists for top newspapers and magazines. I was like, I don't know how I ended up here, but yeah, it's pretty cool. And I've appeared on my podcast before I started my own, and written some other like columns and stuff. So yeah, it's something that I'm still involved with, and my sights are kind of set on going to the World Cup, then the next World Cup, as with a media pass, which would be mental because I get to go for free and it'll be so cool.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where that is at the moment. So yeah, but as for university, I studied economics and management because I thought economics was something that I would be really interested in, the analytical side and everything, and just studying how the economy functions and what causes it to basically like not work. And it's quite a big thing. So for me, it really interested me, all of that. But I didn't just want to do straight econ because it just seemed a bit dead to me. It seemed a bit boring. There's a lot of theoretical stuff behind it, and I was like, yeah, it's good, but I feel like in the long run, I won't learn as many skills as if I did management on the side as well. And I know a lot of people would disagree with me and be like, yeah, management's just a DOS part of a degree, but I actually learned a lot of stuff from it, stuff like strategy and business management and stuff. So I wrote like a theoretical paper for a whiskey firm that wants to go to China. So all of that stuff, like, I feel is very useful now, moving into a different role where you're analyzing like the strategic aspect of where your company or a different company, if you work for a different company, should move into. So yeah, all of that stuff I feel like was really useful for me.
The other really interesting thing about you, during your university experience, you didn't sit around like the rest of us and I guess waste the time, because you came out in 2019 as the one to watch in the Undergraduate of the Year awards. Can you talk me through that experience and I guess why you were chosen or how it came to light?
Yeah, that was mental. I didn't actually think that would happen, but um, so basically, the Undergraduate of the Year awards is something that, I mean, I think there's like 12 awards in different categories. And so my one was one to watch, Undergraduate of the Year. That was a category. And yeah, I saw it as a really just cool thing to network with people. And I didn't really think I was going to win it. So I just applied. And so, yeah, with all that stuff that we just talked about, so like the football journalism, and so I like started a business as well at university that like we'll probably talk about in a second. But I got to the final, and the final was a huge, massive event. It was so Rachel Riley from Countdown was presenting it, and there were some really big people in the room. I didn't realize it was this big of an event, actually, to be honest. I thought it was just, I don't know, some just like a really small thing. But it was huge. It was in a really cool part of London. And then, yeah, like it got to my category. My category was one of the last ones, and I was like really nervous about it. And so they went to the next slide, and I saw my face. I was like, oh, and they read out my name. Obviously, they didn't say my name correctly because like, no one ever does. But I was like, yeah, this is cool. So I went up, and yeah, I shook like Rachel Riley's hand. I was like pretty much shaking, and she asked me a question. I completely blanked her. I just didn't say anything because I was just so nervous. So that's kind of where I didn't really believe it, like for the next few days.
Yeah.
And the prize was a trip to New York, which was really cool as
Oh,
well. Yeah,
amazing.
so I went to New York before the coronavirus, obviously, and yeah, it was really, really fun.
No, that sounds like an incredible experience, and as we will discover in a minute, insanely well deserved. So your company that you mentioned there that you built in university is called Peppercorn. And can you just tell me a little bit more about that, and for anyone that's never heard of it before, what you guys do and what your aim is?
Yeah, sure. So when I first went to university, I had like a list of goals that I wanted to achieve. Not achieve, but just do. So it comes back to the whole thing of like trying as many things as possible. And university is like the perfect time to do that, I feel. And so I knew that there was all of these like funding opportunities for students, and one of them was O2. So this like telecommunications brand that invested quite a lot into young entrepreneurs. And this one was specifically for young entrepreneurs who wanted to make a social change. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is really cool, because for me, I've really been heavily into sustainability for a long time, and it's a big passion of mine. So I was like, okay, if that opportunity is there, with my passion of doing that, I really want to, apply for that funding and hopefully make a positive change for Bristol, where I was at. So I basically came up with a few different ideas, and I settled on one of them. And this one, it didn't get funding in the end, but it kind of evolved into what it is now. But the original idea was so farmers, they throw away a lot of vegetables and fruits, because like literally, I don't know if you'd know about this, but literally because supermarkets are like, yeah, nah, it's a bit too big, or it's a bit too small, or it's the wrong shape, it's slightly the wrong color, and they basically just get rejected. I don't know if you know about that, but it's a massive problem, and they just get thrown away for no reason really. So I saw that as a massive problem, and I thought this would be the angle that I'd take to reduce food waste. So I basically came up with the idea of a vegetable or fruit box that takes all of these like not discarded, but like fruit and veg that don't get sold to supermarkets, and like ship them out to students in like a box service. So that was the idea. And I thought it was a pretty good idea. And it's actually like, there's a company in London called Oddbox, which is doing pretty well with that exact idea. But at the time, it wasn't as popular as it is now. So I didn't know about it. But so I pitched it to O2. I got to the pitching stage, and they ended up rejecting me because, in their words, I didn't know enough about the problem of food waste. And so for me, it was like, oh, I just got rejected. Like, I haven't faced that level of rejection, especially when I was so confident. So I was like, okay, it's a bit annoying. But you know what? I can always apply next year. So I kind of refined it and took their feedback on board. And I spoke to farmers. So I actually arranged, meetings with them. And they were like, yeah, we waste a lot of food. Also, like, shop owners waste a lot of food. I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I arranged like meetings with cafes and bakeries and stuff. So I spoke to them, and they were like, yeah, at the end of our day, we throw away a lot of sandwiches and like pastries and stuff, because we have to make them fresh every day. I was like, what? Like, you actually throw these away? Like, that's mental, because there's literally a homeless person sitting right outside. Why is that going on? It's criminal to me. It didn't make sense. So I asked them why they do that. And they were like, yeah, it's because it's very difficult to arrange a donation with a charity, because some of them don't accept certain foods. Some of them have different time windows as to when they'll don't like accept it. There's health and safety problems, all of these things. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. So my next idea, taking this on in mind, was how about we set up like a social media platform so businesses can coordinate donations with charities in their local area. I actually volunteered for a charity for a bit, Help Bristol's Homeless, and yeah, I ran the idea by them, and they were like, yeah, basically it just wouldn't work. I was like, why? And they were like, yeah, because we rely on volunteers, and we can't have them like checking the computer every 5 seconds for donations. It just wouldn't work. So it came to the point where I refined it even further, to the point where Peppercorn now is a platform that matches businesses that have excess food to local nonprofits based on the type of food it is and the type of food the charity will accept, based on the timings and some other metrics that we have. And then we'll actually go physically pick it up and take it to the charity. So that's where the businesses are right now. And I had a few like trialists involved, and I had a few charities on board as well. And also the charities that sign up to sign an indemnity agreement, so it shields the business from health and safety, which is a big concern of theirs.
Yeah,
So
because sorry to cut across you, but I was going to say, I know there's been a few people that have tried to do stuff like that in Ireland. And I spoke to one of them, and their biggest concern, you know, with the whole issue of redistributing food was that health and safety thing
Yeah.
of the liability of causing food poisoning or whatever. So a lot of people won't go near it because of that issue.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest problem that I've like discussed with shop owners. But the thing I always say is like, well, firstly, which homeless person is going to sue you? Like, realistically, how are they going to get lawyers to sue you? That's the first thing. But then, that's just one thought. But then there's other things of, so I don't know if you have, I mean, you probably do, but so Pret a Manger in the UK, they used to donate a lot of their food to charity. They had a whole fleet of vans to actually donate the food to charity at the end of the day. And so they did it for a number of years, but they actually stopped recently in some places. I think they do it in some places, but not all, because they had to cut back on costs. So they had to cut back on those vans. They don't have the logistics to donate it. But they managed to donate for so many years without any problems because they had the same agreement that we're using.
But in terms of you as a business owner and, I guess the more logistical side of things, do you operate as kind of on a charity basis, or how do you make this a lucrative business to, I guess, eventually live off of for yourself?
Yeah, this is the thing. This is the thing that I'm kind of running into at the moment, where we're like looking into different ways to grow it and monetize it. At the beginning, it was very much like we cover our costs and that's it. But as time's gone on, so we got funding from O2. We got £10,000 from O2. Then Bristol Uni gave me some money as well. So that's enabled me to basically sustain it for a bit. But I've thought, to enable us to grow organically and to not have to rely on donations from people, to grow and then solve the problem of food waste on a national scale, we need to be a for-profit company.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're running up at the moment, where it's very local at the moment. It's in Bristol, but in the future, we're looking at different avenues. So stuff like data is a big thing. So food businesses can understand their data a lot more. So they won't make as much food in advance, saving them money. And that's something that would be quite powerful for them, I feel. And then we'd charge a fee, a monthly fee based on that technology that we can give to them. Yeah, it's something that we're running into at the moment. And I'm also looking for like co-founders so at the moment it's kind of just me on my own. So I'm
Yeah.
looking for co-founders to take it to the next level with me. And I mean, at the end of the day, if we can't monetize it, I'll still be happy with the point that we got to, where, we were helping a lot of homeless people and reducing food waste in Bristol for a long time.
And I think for anyone listening, it's very clear that, you have experienced success in your life, even though you're still so young. So I would be really interested to know what that word success means to you personally, or if you have a personal definition of what that would look like.
Oh, that's a very deep one. That's a very deep one. And it's a good question as well, because so my personal definition of success has changed quite a lot in recent years. So, when I was younger, it was very much like success was money. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So like, if I can make loads of money out of this, that's success for me. And any sort of like failure and not being able to make money from it. So that's what failure was as well. That was bad. But as I've kind of grown older and matured, I don't see that as success anymore. I see it more as what I've learned in the process of the thing that I've done. So that's where I'm at right now, is just learning as much as possible from the stuff I do. So that's why I'm always trying to push myself out of my comfort zone to, give me the opportunities to learn, and also surrounding myself with people that are smarter than I am. So yeah, that's kind of where I see success at the moment. And like, failure for me and success it's strange because they're meant to be opposites, but they're actually very synonymous with, like, in my personal definition, because the end result of both of them is learning. So yeah, I think that's kind of it's a weird definition for myself, but that's kind of how I see it.
No, I love that. Like it's that, I don't know who said it, but it's that thing of you never fail, you win or you learn. And I love that, and I completely agree with it. No, I think that's a really interesting take on success. And then my last question for you, and I'm going to let you get on with your day after that. If I put your 10-year-old self in front of you today, having been through everything you've been through, both in your career and your personal life as well, what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give that 10-year-old self moving forward in life?
Oh God, that's such a difficult one. So I'm one of these people that tries not to regret anything in their life because it's just like led to this moment in time. But I think, yeah, maybe just like keep going. Like don't get disheartened by the failures early on in your life. And a big thing for me that I've thought of a lot recently is that don't let age, as in, I've always kind of set limits on myself, which I don't feel like you should. So I've always was like, I want to achieve this by like 20 years old. I want to achieve this by 21. I want to achieve this by 30. And I feel like that gives you a lot of unnecessary stress from a young age, so much because, I think Gary Vee says it, but we're going to like the age, like we're going to live for a long time. That's just how like we just are, like most of us, if we live a decent lifestyle. So putting those limits on yourself where you want to achieve things by a certain age, and if you don't achieve them by that age and you achieve them like 2 years later, you're still going to stress yourself out so much, just because you haven't done that. So that's for me, that caused me a lot of stress early on in my life where I didn't achieve things by a certain age and I put a lot of unnecessary pressure on myself. So that, yeah, if you can cut that out of your life, I know it's difficult to do that, I guess, for me, because I mean, any driven person wants to achieve things at a certain point in time, but I feel like you'll be a lot more happier in your life by not doing that. And that's what I've learned. And I'm still kind of overcoming that at the moment. So, if I tell a 10-year-old self of me to not do that, I feel like, yeah, it will lead to a much more happier life in the long run.
Well, I just want to take this time to say thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me and sharing your incredible story and your advice. I think it will be so relatable to a lot of people, and really interesting to hear about the work that you're doing. And you also have a
My
podcast
pleasure.
called
Yeah.
the Millennial Entrepreneur Podcast, which I'm going to link in the show notes alongside your business website. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lucy.
Thank you so much for listening, and as always, please rate, share, and leave a comment if you like what you hear. And don't forget to follow @WhatIt'sLikePod on Instagram and Facebook. To find out more about Sina and his career and to listen to his podcast on entrepreneurship, visit the links provided in the show notes. I'll be back on Thursday with more inspiring stories, but for now, this has been What It's Like with Luce.